Well, greetings and welcome to the Rainmaker Project. My name is Mark Herringshaw and I'm thrilled to have you. I actually have a chance to know most of you and some of you I even work with, so we're not really strangers in that sense, but maybe this is a little different format for us. But I'm really thrilled because this is actually the 32nd time I've done this retreat. Most of them, of course, have been live. We're trying a little different format here because we've got people from all over the world and different time zones. But it's really going to be an amazing time because prayer is an incredible mechanism that really allows us to tap something deep, something that God alone can really do. The premise behind Rainmaker is that God works through prayer. Prayer itself doesn't work, but when we pray and in relationship with God, really engage Him in the circles of influences in our lives, He really works, He really acts, and He really wants to be involved. So we're going to talk about that and have a chance actually to put it into place. I started Rainmaker actually with a couple of friends back in 1999, a long time ago in the scope of things, I guess. I was in the middle of my doctoral work. I was pastoring a church at the time and really up against some challenges of my own leadership. Really felt like out of my learning, the reading I was doing, the doctoral studies I was doing, I was getting all the principles, but I really still found a kind of ineptitude in my own practice, how I actually implemented those principles. And I really came to the end of myself in that sense, realizing it's really through prayer and through inviting God to work through who I am and what He's taught me. That's really where the fire began to really ignite. So Rainmaker came out of that process, my own failure, but also my own understanding that prayer was really a way of inviting God to be part of that which He had given me to be responsible for. So the Rainmaker process that we're going to go through is 30 days. This is the way we've done this for 32 retreats now, as we take a month and we pray specifically in prayer teams, 2-3 people. I've asked you or will ask you to come up into those or form those prayer teams. And there's something really powerful about that kind of unity. On the front end, we've recorded 7 of these videos. I'm doing this just a few days before we're starting the actual Rainmaker process here in January 2016. And this is recorded specifically for this group. There's 50 of us in this particular workshop that are going for this 1 month, end of January on through February. And we're really forming a kind of community together. Really want you to feel that you're a part of that. We've got a place on Facebook to post our comments and our questions, talk a little bit about some of the things that are becoming real to us through this process, stuff God's doing. Some of you may laugh about that because I'm not very good with Facebook. I don't go on very often, but we found that this is really going to be a pretty good platform for this. So we'll do these 7 videos. We're giving you several days over that time to watch them, listen to them. There's some exercises we'll ask you to do in preparation for the 30 days of prayer. Then starting on the 31st of January, that's when we'll actually begin the prayer process. The first 9 days, we're going to be focusing on listening, just hearing what God has to say to us, because we come with all kinds of agendas and ideas, what we think God's going to do or what we think He should do, what we want to ask Him. But actually, we want to lay all that down and really listen to His focus. Our leadership, we need God's guidance in that. We want to start by actually laying down and setting aside our own agenda with that. Then we'll follow up with the last 21 days of the month using the model that Daniel lays out in the book of Daniel, chapter 10. There's a 21-day season of prayer that Daniel exercised, and he fasts during that time. He presses in very specifically to things he was asking God. We're going to follow that same pattern and pray together in teams. And again, from the precedents we've seen in the past, God's going to do some great things. And it may not be what we expect, but He really will work. We're going to be doing this, and I'm getting a lot of help with this. Obviously, I couldn't do this by myself. I'm not very technically astute. And standing behind the camera right now is Elizabeth Peterson, and she happens to be my daughter, and thrilled that she's going to be helping administrate this. So if you've got any questions, you've gotten some emails from Ellie and communiques, and she'll kind of keep us going. If you're familiar with Myers-Briggs, some of us that work with Giant are familiar with that. Ellie is my ISTJ, who's keeping everything in order, kind of keeping banks on the river, and my flightiness, my ENTP, creativity, entrepreneur, craziness. Ellie kind of keeps me in order. So really thrilled about that. You can talk to Ellie if you've got questions specifically about how this is going to go forward. But again, we're just thrilled that you're part of this. I wanted to start really and step back and tell you one story out of the very first Rainmaker, the first Rainmaker that happened back in 1999. And in many ways, it's taken 17 years for this story to unfold. Art Erdman, a good friend of mine, he's a professor at the University of Minnesota. He was a part of our first Rainmaker event. We had several of our friends that came together and we were praying about business situations, leadership challenges that people were dealing with. And Art was a part of that first group. I was going through my doctorate at the time. Art had been teaching at the University of Minnesota, so we had some things in common. We were talking on those terms. And Art came with a particular question in mind. He's a mechanical engineering professor at the U of M, and at the time he was really wondering how his department, mechanical engineering, could bridge a gap that he saw at the medical center at the university and the medical device companies that are here in Minneapolis-St. Paul area, like Guidant and Boston Scientific, Medtronic, big companies that had strong relationships with Mayo Clinic, which is also here in Minnesota. And Art was really feeling like there had to be a way that the university could play in that world, and he was really concerned about that. And so he came and he had decided to start a conference about this. And his prayer project for Rainmaker for that first time was to pray about that conference, that God would really bless it. Well, what happened was really extraordinary. Shortly after that month of prayer, Art's first conference was just a roaring success. He had more people involved. He got more money from that in terms of sponsorships than he was expecting. It was just really a banner opportunity. And then from that, some really remarkable things began to happen. Art began to wonder what he could do next, and he began to ponder whether he should help to launch a kind of institute or a center that would be a hub for medical device research here in the Twin Cities. He was really pondering this, and it was actually one particular evening near Thanksgiving, one of those probably about a year or so right after the first Rainmaker, and he was pondering how he should be involved in this next step. And just at that time, he got a phone call from a mutual friend of ours named David. And Art was literally at his desk jotting some notes about all this. And he gets a phone call from David. And David said, "Hey, Art, I don't know what you're doing right now, but I really feel prompted by God to call and say that whatever you're doing, whatever you're thinking about, it's God's will and purpose. He wants you to do it and not anybody else." Art was just really blown away. He knew that David didn't know anything about this, what he was working on or thinking about. David just out of the blue felt like he had this impression. Well, Art went and really ran with that. He actually came back a couple of other times, did Rainmaker and some prayer projects a couple of other times along the way, and really began to drill into this. And he decided that he was going to take this idea of an institute, and he wrote up a white paper, and he made several copies of the white paper. And over the next couple of weeks, he stuck those in his briefcase, and he just began to run into people of influence at the university. He ran into some people from the governor's office here in Minnesota, key alumni, and within 8 weeks, he had his project fully funded, fully embraced by the university, embraced by the state of Minnesota, the medical center, and suddenly there was a medical device center underway. And the following year, they made Art the director of the Medical Device Center at the University of Minnesota. That was several years ago, and now they've got their own beautiful facility on the University of Minnesota campus. They're giving grants. They have multiple numbers of patents that are changing people's lives, really saving people's lives through the medical advances. And the amazing thing is, just this last year, David, who's a consultant in Asia, came back to Art, and they've built a bridge now between the University of Minnesota Medical Device Center and 2 key universities in Asia, and they're going to be making that as a kind of joint venture, it looks like, and it's just really, really amazing. And it came out of prayer. Now there's a correlation there. We look at that and think, okay, there's prayer, and then there's these amazing results, and you could say it's coincidence. But we're going to propose through this Rainmaker project that you yourself are going to be walking through that coincidences, if we look at them with eyes of faith, are actually opportunities to grow our faith, and we see God's involved. Yeah, there may be another explanation for how all that came together, but when we look with faith and understand God's given us this incredible gift of conversation with him, to be involved in the things that we're involved with. He gave us these responsibilities, throws us in over our head, so that without him, the very desires that he gives us could never happen. Art afterwards came back and said, I never could have created a medical device institute on my own. He said, I didn't have the vision, I didn't have the ideas, I didn't have the resources. But God gave him the spark, the idea. And then, as Art turned that very thing back over to God, God brought the resources, the relationships, and the wisdom all together. And now something that is really making a difference in the world is underway. I'm really going to believe with this, as you've taken the step of faith to be part of this month of prayer, you and your prayer partners, that God's going to do something remarkable in your life as well and in your leadership. May not be quite as dramatic as Art's. It may not unfold over 17 years like Art's story, but God's going to do something extraordinary, and I'm thrilled to be part. So encourage you to take the next steps. There's going to be a few more videos. Encourage you to hop onto those. Hop onto the Facebook page and introduce yourself to the other folks that are a part of this. Again, there's 50. We've kind of capped it at 50. And let's begin to really work together and believe that God's going to do something extraordinary in this next month. Thanks so much for being a part.